Hi guys, Twitch here from Creep Designs. This week we are bringing you another YouTube challenge. So this challenge is the Dupe challenge. It is hosted by Clara at No Can Do. So make sure you look in the description for her YouTube channel. The goal for this challenge is to copy or recreate a high-end or expensive piece of furniture. So I had a bit of a hard time looking for high-end furniture because high-end furniture isn't really my thing. Most of the furniture that's in our house is still flat pack. I haven't really had time to work on stuff for ourselves to keep, but that'll be changing soon, hopefully. So I did start off looking at this piece, and I was going to recreate this piece either by building it from scratch or by taking a bedside table and turning that into a desk, or taking a desk and kind of making that look as close to this as possible. But I had to scrap that because no matter how much I searched, I couldn't find anything that was usable. So then I found this little side table, and I had a quick look at the photo. There wasn't a lot of photos of it for reference, but I had a quick look at it and I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can build that from scratch easily. So went to Bunnings, got the stuff I needed, got it here. It's literally a sheet of MDF and some sticks. They're not sticks, but I'll call them sticks. So I just want to point out here, this is to copy. This is not going to be as high-end as the piece that I'm copying, clearly. And big thank you to Clara from No Can Do again for hosting this challenge. And whilst I'm here, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Gladys for buying me coffees on the Buy Me a Coffee app. Let's get going. Alright, so the pieces I purchased from Bunnings are my sticks. Whoops. So I've gone with squares for the legs because that looks like what they are. And here are the measurements for you if anyone wants to also try to make these. I'll put it in the description. And this is the MDF sheet that I got to make the round parts. You can make these out of solid wood if you'd prefer, but this is what I'm going for just for cheapness. I'll either keep them or sell them, I don't know. Again, I'll put it in the description. Alright, my plan is to make 2 of these little side tables. So first thing I'm going to do is measure these lengths up and cut them in half. And then once I've got the legs sorted and cut to the length that I want them at, I will then work out how big to make the circles for the circle parts. And then I chop them in half on my choppy chopper. Thank you Sabrina from Sab's Rehabs for the oddball names. So before I start measuring up my circles for the tables, I'm finding the halfway point on my sheet of MDF, because if I start measuring up my circles and I go over that halfway point with only doing 2 circles, I'll know that I'm not going to have enough. So I'm finding that halfway point and keeping each set of 2 circles inside that parameter. I ended up having more than enough, so it didn't really matter. Going for kind of a eyeballing technique for working out how big I want the circles to be, and singing and dancing apparently. Again, I'm kind of eyeballing things to work out what my measurements are going to be, but I'm going for 28 centimeters here for the top piece. The bottom circle, or the circle part on the lower part of the table, will need to be smaller to account for the width of the legs. So I'm going 18 mil off either side of the circle, so off the entire diameter of the circle. At this point I was still trying to work things out, how the best way to go about this, and kind of arguing with myself as I go. I would have left the sound on, but there was a lot of swearing and no one needs to hear that. So to do this part, I put a screw in the very center of the circle, and I saw this technique on someone else's video. It was just on Instagram. This guy has a lot of good tips and tricks and stuff like that. He's a tiler. And I thought I'd give this a go. It kind of worked. It makes sense how it works, but it also didn't work because the tape itself was a bit too bendy and it kept bending and twisting, and it was just awkward, as you can tell. So I am all for finding ways to make my job easier, no matter what it is, and in this case I'm drilling a hole through the corner of my workbench, which is a dining table. You'll see why. So at this point I need to make the smaller rounds for the bottom part of the table. I measured 18 millimeters in around the diameter, I nearly swore, diameter of the circle to bring it in to allow for the legs. But it wasn't going quite as planned. I couldn't work out the best way to measure it, so I ended up going back to the old, nail and string thing, except I used the drill bit that I used to cut the hole. So my cutting was rough as guts, so I put them back on the corner of the table and got my Prepmate 2 Orbital sander out and smoothed out all the edges and lumps and bumps. So I still don't have any DAR plugs, so I've stolen one of my son's pencils. First thing I'm doing is sanding off any glossy surface on the pencil. Then I'm just chucking some wood glue in there, shoving the pencil in, and using my multi-tool to cut it flush. That simple. They'll never know. So in the photo of the high-end table, it does look like it's got some metal banding around the edges of the rounds. I wasn't going to go that far, but I had looked into getting veneer strips or banding strips to do that, but I'm like, no, I can get away with just doing the rounds. And then I changed my mind, of course, so I decided to try cutting my own edge bandings from just some timber that I had laying around using my power saw. There were some parts that came out a bit thicker than I wanted and weren't very bendable, so I sanded them thinner with my power sander and then went over them all with just a piece of sandpaper to smooth it all out and get rid of any burrs. These will all get painted in Cup of Joe, as will the rest of the frame, but to avoid getting any brown paint on the round marble surfaces, I'm painting the parts that will be going up against the marble. I'm doing bunny ears, but you can't see, just to avoid getting any paint on the marble surfaces, like I just said. I'm repeating myself. Anyway, so I gave the MDF pieces a coat of clear coat, and now I'm priming all of the pieces with Millie Boutique Primer and Adhesive Bond. Now I've got all of my pieces up on paint tins so that I can do a paint pour. I've never done one before, so we'll see how this goes. I'm using Millie Suffuse paint in the colour Little Lamb, and to make it easier to pour, I'm adding some water to it. Now I'm going to add some Woolshed from the Boutique Mineral Paint range. And some Chelsey cream. I don't want to stir these in too much, but I'm just going to put my stirrer in there and give them a bit of a swirl around and a bit of a dip up and down to get it through the Little Lamb. Now, I haven't done this before and royally stuffed it up the first time. This is my first attempt. So I thought I could just pour it on all 4 pieces and then hit it with the heat gun on the coolest setting to blow it all out towards the edges, but that didn't work. And because I let the other ones sit there for a bit, they ended up with like a halo in the center of it, if you can see it. So if you're going to attempt this, do one at a time for starters, and maybe get some pointers from someone who actually does this stuff all the time. This isn't my thing and I'll probably never do it again, but I wanted to get a marble effect and this was the best way for me to do it. So because I was so unhappy with the outcome of this, I ended up scraping it all off and pouring it back into my jug. I got paint everywhere, but I wanted to reuse it because there's a lot of paint to waste. And I was like, I'm not going to be happy with this, so I'm just going to have another go at it. So I cleaned the surfaces off with some water and a rag to get a nice clean surface again, and added some more paint and just went for it again. This time I also added some cookies from the Boutique Mineral Paint range. This time I did one at a time, added more paint than I needed, and just made sure all of my edges were covered. So I thought I would also take this opportunity to announce for anyone who doesn't already know that Carts and Millie is bringing out a new paint range. This will be an enamel based paint, and it is extremely low or no VOC and apparently absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. So this is the following day when they've had overnight to dry, and they are fantastic. There are some lumps and bumps, whether you can see them or not, I don't know. That's not that big a deal because I can sand that smooth. So I just sanded these with, I think it was 240 grit sandpaper. So now I'm going to clear coat these with Carts and Millie Boutique Satin Topcoat. I'm using a, was it 5mm nap mohair roller to do these. Starting with the edges so that I can hold it and then rolling the tops. I did one coat and then sanded it smooth with 400 grit sandpaper and then went over the top surface with another coat. So going back to the legs, I've taped all of the legs together, got one end flush, and am just trimming off the other end to get everything the same length. So from looking at the legs in the photo, it looks like they've got a very, very slight taper on the very bottom of the legs, only on the outside. The inside looks like it is squared off. So I've got all the legs taped together, and I'm just using the sander to put a very slight taper on the front face. I could do this on the drop saw and put it on a very slight angle and cut the taper that way, but this was the quickest and easiest way for me to do this, and I only wanted it to be very slight, and it worked a treat. So I'm pretty sure this is where things started to go pear-shaped. I think I measured here completely wrong. I don't think my holes for the top were the same distance apart. I was rushing to try and get this done and completely buggered it up, and I should not have tried to attach the legs here. Yeah, I definitely should have attached the edging before attaching the legs. I did it completely backwards, and you know, you live and learn, and then you never do one of these again. So I stuffed up again, applied glue to the banding, and then tried using my brand new second-hand staple gun to attach it, but it kept breaking and punching through, and I gave up on the staple gun even though I really wanted to use it, and just stuck it down with tape, which is what I should have done right from the start. And as you could tell, all the legs came off. And you can tell right about now just how frustrated I am getting with it. Alright, so this is where I'm at. I decided to do a test run on one of the side tables to work out how to assemble it, and then this would get put off to the side and I would video myself assembling the other one, but it has turned into an absolute show. Yeah, as you can see, the legs are all crooked. They're, you know, where I want it there, but then this one is like, let's see if I can show you. This one is sticking out. It's just, yeah, it's annoying because the marble parts turned out really nice. I put a lot of work into it, but I can't really afford to put any more time into this, so I'm going to call it here and call this a fail. So I stopped crying and had a second wind. This is the one that's going on the burn pile, and this one is the one I had another attempt at assembling. It's still a bit rough, but it is a damn sight better than that. So basically what I did wrong with this one was my measurements were all off for one part of it, which threw everything else off, and I made the mistake of attaching the legs here and then here, whereas I attached the legs to the top of this one and then measured where I wanted this to come to and attached it around the sides. So once I got all that together, I chucked a clamp on this to glue it down again because that join was horrible. I put the join for this banding behind one of the legs to hold it in place, and I have puttied all of the screw holes on the legs. So now that that's done, I'm going to trim some of this edge off with a knife and try and tidy things up, smooth things down a bit, and then get onto the painting process. Alright, so this is getting a bit on the lengthy side now for this video, so I'm going to try and breeze through the rest of this. So I'm using Millie Boutique Mineral Paint in the colour Cup of Joe as the base for the frame of this table. The original table has a metal frame, so I'm using Cup of Joe as a base for a metallic wax. So I tested a couple of different waxes to choose the colour I liked, and I'm going with this wax from Redesign. I can't actually make out what the colour name is, but it's a really nice warm, almost orangey gold colour, which is working perfectly for this look, I feel. So I'm just rubbing it on with my finger. I didn't really have a small brush to use on hand. By the end of this piece, my fingers were completely numb from rubbing this entire thing. Well, I don't know about you, but I would call that a success. It looks like a table, it smells like a table, so I'd call it a table. That sucked. I didn't trust it to put anything bigger on it. It's alright, but it's kind of wobbly. I could have done a heaps better job. If I hadn't rushed it, I probably would have measured things properly and probably would have assembled it properly, and I probably would have had 2 tables there instead of 1. But I know where I went wrong, so there's no need to let me know in the comments. I'm sure I will see where I went wrong in the comments anyway. But please do let me know in the comments whether you think I succeeded at duping the Chloe side table from Temple and Webster. Thank you again, Clara from No Can Do. If you haven't already, go and check out her channel in the description. You can also find the link to the full playlist in the description if you aren't already watching on the playlist. Make sure you watch all of the videos. We all greatly appreciate every view and every comment and every share. Yada yada yada. What else? Don't forget, you can find all of the links in the description for all of the products I used and any other references made during the video. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.